Magic fingers while we wait. Live! All right, awesome. Welcome, everyone, to another QuaranCon Tube. That's QuaranCon Continuing Content, our year-round interview series in which mostly I talk to people who are awesome in the SFF community, authors, bloggers. I'm hoping to talk to like designers and artists and stuff in the future too. I once talked to a physicist just for fun. But we have a very, very special guest tonight. You all probably know him. You're probably here because you know Mihir and not because you know QuaranCon, because he's a big deal. But he's also just like one of the nicest people in the SFF community, and does a ton of stuff for indie SFF books and for trad SFF books too. But of course, I'm partial to the things he does for indie. But it's Mihir Wanchoo, and he is here to talk about all kinds of fun stuff, from fantasy book critic to the longest cricket match he's ever seen. To an amazing interview series that he's doing himself now. That's really, really cool. Yeah, thank you so much, Mihir, for taking time out of your day to talk to me.
No, thank you. Thank you, Virginia, for having me over. And for everybody watching, all that you said, that's not true. I'm just super, super, super glad to be here. And of course, I enjoyed my participation in QuaranCon. So when she afforded me this opportunity, I was like, yes, well, why not? I get to talk to Virginia all over again. So awesome.
Well, I always enjoy chatting with you, and so I've been excited for this ever since we started planning it. It's a nice bright spot in my day, because we always have such good chats. And the last time we chatted was actually because you were kind enough to invite me to your new interview series, and so we could just start talking about that, even though I have a bunch of other random questions. But
absolutely. So for the people who might not have seen it, I'm part of Fantasy Book Critic, a blog that's been active since 2007. And one of the things, which nowadays has happened is the proliferation of, audio interviews and video interviews. And that's something which I always wanted to do because I always loved interviewing authors, but the email interview format was very restrictive. And of course, you send them the questions, they reply back, but there's no follow-up. Right. I did want to do something more about that, but then of course interviewing authors is also nerve-wracking because or the email, it's okay because I can send their questions and I can wait for them to reply back. But when you're doing this in face-to-face, it is even more so worrisome. So I came up with this idea of like, how do I entice authors to talk? Because I know some authors like to talk and some authors are a little bit more hesitant. So I was like, okay, let me think of something because most authors are book lovers.
Yes.
And there's got to be a book that, they love that they can talk about for hours. And I was like, okay, maybe if I can get the authors to talk about their favorite books and we discuss them, and at the same time, I can read them in preparation for the interview. That's how it all literally came up over a week or so. Wow. And then I reached out to you, to Richard Nell, to Dirk Ashton, and a couple more authors. And thankfully, everybody has agreed so far. Nobody has said no. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed that my trend continues to.
It's such a great idea. Some of us get asked to do interviews a lot or not so often, but no matter how many interviews we do, sometimes it gets old just talking about yourself, right? And like, I personally, don't get me wrong, I talk a lot and I have no hindrance talking about myself, but it's so much more fun to just like rave about somebody else's books for once. And so I really loved the chance to talk to you about Black Sun, even though I felt like an incoherent mess because I kept interrupting myself because of spoilers. And so I just like kept cutting myself off and then not really making a point because I'd be like, no, if I actually finish that's a spoiler.
No, see that's exactly what I wanted to do because that's exactly what I want. That the author is excited to talk about that book, and your enthusiasm came through really well. So don't worry about it. And of course, there's also always the worry of spoilers because no matter what you do, you're like there's always going to be that one person who's like, I didn't want that spoiled.
Right. Yeah.
So
totally. Yeah. But it's a great idea. I love it. Part of me wants to steal it, but I'm like figuring out how could I twist it so I'm not just stealing that exact thing. Like I don't want to take that from you because you're doing such an awesome job with it. But I'm like, what else could I talk about that's not maybe their favorite book? But I'm like, maybe I just bring people on and talk about their favorite hobby, or they're like, what's something you geek out on that's not books, and like, do that.
Yeah, you could definitely do that, or you could get like a bunch of others to talk about their common favorite book or favorite series.
Ooh, like an entire panel of like, everyone tear apart, X book.
Robin Hobb. Yeah, Robin Hobb's Farseer trilogy or something like that.
That's not bad. But you could do that too, and I don't want to take that.
No, it's not, because it's not an original idea. To be honest with you, it's not an original. I'm pretty sure somebody somewhere is doing it. So
probably, yeah.
If I can think of it, why couldn't you? So you go ahead. And plus, QuaranCon has a bigger reach. Honestly, I think the last I checked, I have 12 subscribers. That's which is, I'm super glad for those 12 people for even following me, because I'm getting it really maybe I've done 7. So, I mean, I've done a lot more, but I've published only 7.
Yeah.
I need to be better at it, but it just takes so much time to do that. And I have to write reviews, and then I have my monkeys, my kids. So it's a lot. But so I'm actually in awe of now the booktubers who do this day in, day out. They put up interviews, they put up reviews, they put up content. And I'm like, I just, it's in that one interview to prepare for that takes me a long time. So kudos to them, and kudos to you for
totally.
QuaranCon.
Well, but see, the reason that QuaranCon is 100% live is so that I never have to edit any videos, because it takes so much time. Just, oh my God, Mihir, if I could tell you the amount of time it took me to do the freaking 2.5-minute Kickstarter video, so long, and so many takes, and oh my gosh. And eventually I just gave up, and I was like, that's close enough. And, it was fine. But it just, they take so much effort. So no, I massively hand it to any booktuber who puts up edited videos, even if all they've done is cut out it's just that amount of editing takes so much time. And and so that's why I only do live things. I'm like, let's do it live. People are like, oh, you do it live? That's so bold of you. I'm like, I would much rather wing it and not have to edit.
But see, for me, that's very bold. Like, I was a little bit apprehensive, because I was like, I was working for the whole day, and I was thinking like, I have to do this, I have to do this, I have to prepare for that. So in between my work, I was thinking of like, okay, this, I need to do this. I need to not say this. I need to not goof up. So yeah, I kudos to you for doing this live, because if you had given me an option, it would not be live.
Oh, well, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for putting you on the spot. I do know some people will say no because it's live. And I will sometimes, for people who are super apprehensive about it, and I guess, I'm sorry, I didn't tell you this, but I am willing to pre-record and then post it, but I will not edit that at all. So it would just be exactly whatever people said. I could be like, I guess I could say, if you felt like some part of that was really weird and you want me to cut it, I can.
I see that. No, but this is actually good. It's good to get out of the comfort zone, because then you kind of get experience for it, and then you can okay, now I can do that as well. So this is good in my evolution from maybe 12 to 20 YouTube followers. This is good practice. And thank you to all 12 of you who are watching this, if you are watching this.
That's awesome. You may only have 12 subscribers, but you probably have way more viewership than that total, in terms of just because FBC is big, and those get posted through FBC, right? So
yes. So yeah, I do post them on YouTube, but then I also create a post where I embed the video. So that's the hope. But I wish I was more technologically literate to kind of figure that out, how much views and everything. And I'm also lazy. I'm like, I did it. It's posted. That's it. Even if 2 people watch it, I'm happy. If 20 people watch it, I'm happy. If 2,000 people watch it, I'll be ecstatic. But it's like, I did it, and I'm lazy. I'm like,
done.
I
would not call that lazy in the context of your life, in which you are working an intense full-time job. You have 2 small children. You're helping to run this giant blog, and do all this reading and reviewing that you do. I don't think it can be construed as lazy to just post a video and be like, that's good enough. That strikes me as perfectly reasonable and not lazy at all.
Well, the internal voice always, my internal voice just is like, you're lazy. But then I also counter it with I don't know how to do it, and I don't know how to be better at it. So I'm like, okay, I'll learn it. And plus, thankfully with FBC, I have Lucas to help me. He is a massive genius. He's a massive reader. And now we have actually 4 new bloggers joining us as well, as well. So I'm hoping that, that this takes the pressure off of everybody. And then so long as we're able to congregate and publish reviews, and then maybe do stuff, because I'm hoping that everybody, like, of course everybody reviews the same kind of fantasy, but there's still the favorites everybody has, and out of the blue stuff. So I'm hoping that'll keep FBCU active, especially after the heart attack that we had earlier this year when our blog just went.
Oh my gosh, it disappeared for how long? Was it a week?
Disappeared, close to a week. It disappeared for at least I take that back, 5 to 6 days, because literally I remember getting those notices, like it started at night time, like, because it was a company in Netherlands which was doing it. And so around 9:30, because I have my FSC on my phone as well. I'm getting these notifications. I'm like, what is, because first of all, I don't even know what it was, because I was like, what is DMC? So I had to look it up, and then it just kept on flooding my inbox, and each of them not only had one review, it had one had 15 reviews listed. And I was like, what are they doing? So I quickly forward, and then before sleeping, I was like, okay, I'll just forward it to Lucas and have him also take a look, because he's from the tech field. So I'm like, he'll understand better, and I'll talk to him in the morning. I wake up in the morning, the blog's gone. And because to be fair to Google, 51 DMC notices come within the space of 4 hours. They of course are going to think we are a pirate site.
Sure.
And so the blog is gone, and we're both panicking, because then he kind of figured out what had happened, and I had by then figured out as well, because thanks to his explanation. And we're both panicking. Well, I'm more so than him. He's a very level-headed guy. I should tell that. Lucas is kind of like a rock, but he's very cool and level-headed. So I was panicking. I messaged the blog owner, because I'm part of FBC, but I don't own the blog. Robert Thompson is the guy who created the blog and who started it all. So I emailed him. He's also busy with his children, his life.
Sure.
And he was also like, I don't know what's happening. So I'm like, okay, we'll figure it out. And so Lucas then really took the onus of it. He contacted the people who basically came up with this notifications, and then they realized well, we are not a pirate site. Because I looked at the titles, because the way our blog titles are, it kind of looks like we are offering the book. Anybody who clicks on that link and goes to the page will realize we are not a pirate site.
Yeah.
So I don't know how that person or those people did it, or why they did it, but they did it, and Google just acted on it. So
my gosh,
it took everyone. Literally, when I posted that thread on Twitter, I was hoping that maybe a few people will retweet it, and maybe somebody from Google listened to it.
Right.
But it just amazed me how many hundreds of people retweeted it. It's insane, but in a good way.
Yeah, because we all love you guys. You do so much for the SFF community. How could we not? But that was crazy town. I'm so sorry y'all had to go through that. But yeah, so it disappeared for a week, but it's back. Everything came back with all of its usual, nothing.
Yeah, everything. In fact, Google even published 2 of our reviews when our blog was away. It disappeared, and there were 2 scheduled reviews which actually got posted. One of them was the SPO finalist review of Burn Their Skies by Kirsten. By Kirsten.
Rosero,
Rosero, thank you.
Yeah.
And we were like, Kirsten Espinosa Rosero, yes.
Yeah.
I remember her name. And we were like, we're in the middle of SPFPO.
Yeah.
We have partially some of the reviews posted, some of the reviews are scheduled, and we could not post them. But then when the blog came back, we saw that the last 2 days reviews somehow had been posted, of course, but nobody saw it. So then we were like, okay, SPU, we are back. Here you go. Here's the review, and next 2 weeks are coming. So yeah, that was just. Now looking back at it, it was really funny. At that moment, it was not, because it was literally 15 years worth of. That I actually counted them wrong. I when I was tweeting, I posted the wrong number. It's actually more than 2,000 reviews, more than I want to say 350. Well, no, you know what? More than 2,000 reviews, more than 300 interviews, and I don't even know how many guest posts and all the other extra content. But yeah.
Wow. That would just be, it'd be so heartbreaking if it had actually stayed gone.
Oh, God.
And it must have been, I can't even imagine the stress of having it disappear for even a week. That's just, but I'm so glad it got fixed. That was so intense. Okay, we are going to change tacks really hard now and switch to the silly questions, because we started off with actually, just talking about the interview series, which is so cool, and everyone should check it out. If you're watching this now live or you're watching it later, please go check out Mihir's interview series. I should add it to the link in the description. I posted just an FBC link before, but I can totally add that specifically. Please go look at that, because it's a very fun interview series. The few that I've watched have been really great. The one that I did was really fun. So everyone should check it out. And in the meantime, we're veering off to a lighter topic after the very heavy topic of almost losing the entire FBC. So you live in the Pacific Northwest. How much do you like rain?
So there's some backstory to this. I don't mind the rain, to be honest with you. I come originally from Bombay and from Mumbai.
Okay.
There we only have two settings. It's either hot and humid, or it's rainy and humid. So that's really like, you just sweat and you never dry off. So it's horrible. So before I moved to the US, I was in Bombay, and it was I love India and I love Mumbai, but I really hate the weather.
Yeah.
Then when I moved to the USA, I stayed in two really cold places. In Buffalo first.
Oh, nice.
So really pretty in the summers.
Yes.
Winters are a whole different thing. And then after that, me and my wife decided, oh no, Buffalo wasn't enough. We're going to go to Minnesota. And we survived 2 winters in Minnesota. And then again, we were planning to move because we always wanted to move to the West Coast. So our friends were placing bets on we were going to move to Alaska. And we were like, no, we're not. We're going to go to, so it was between Seattle and Portland. And of course, we didn't want to move to a bigger city. So we decided to Portland.
Nice.
And to answer your question, sorry, I went out a roundabout way. But no, I actually like the rain because it keeps the area green. But best of all, because it doesn't snow, it's like free car wash. It's like a car outside, it's free. I mean, yes, after a while it gets boring because it literally is, it's nice and sunny today, but tomorrow it's going to rain and day after tomorrow it's going to rain. So I'm going to be a little bit grumpy, but it's not too bad.
No, it's fine. I mean, I personally, warm, rainy weather, I adore. Like I will, if it's hot or warm and raining out, I will just like go frolic in the rain for hours and then come back. I mean, I'm exceedingly lucky to have a nice warm home to come back to, and that makes a huge difference, right? Mm-hmm. Like I can go be out in the rain and then come back and warm up. Yep. That's a big difference. But so I love it. But cold, rainy weather, less into. If it's going to be cold, I would much rather it be snowing, personally. Oh. And so I moved to the White City for that. Yeah. But I don't mind the rain. And Portland is such a cool city. I've only been there a couple of times. I had a friend who was living there for a while, and I went and visited her maybe twice while she was there. And then I've flown through to go to see a friend in Bend. Well,
next time you and your family are over here, let me know. I would be happy to take you around Portland. I would be happy to take you all the places to eat because I'm a foodie, and there's a lot of good food in Portland. So there's like really good carts, there's restaurants, there's everything. Like, you name it, they have it. So that's the huge plus.
Awesome. I will definitely take you up on that. Just you wait. And we can hang out with Sonia Black, who I believe lives in the area, and
I didn't know
who else is out that way. Anyway, yes.
There's a lot of people, but I know amongst the indie authors, Ben Galley lives in, he's in
he's in Vancouver, yep.
Yeah, so he's in Vancouver.
He's also in Vancouver, or outside of Vancouver on like one of the, she's in the middle of the beautiful mountains.
Yep. Yeah. I think he's last I spoke to him, he was in Victoria, the island of Victoria, but he's flitting in between. I know somebody else who lives in BC. Oh, one of our
KSV also.
Yeah, SBFPO bloggers, Jennifer Bunny Page. She lives in British Columbia, but of course, British Columbia is huge. Yeah. There's a lot more people in California. There's a lot more people on the West Coast. I'll say this, like at the top of my head, I'm pretty sure I'm forgetting. Oh, KS Uloso. Yeah, I believe she stays somewhere near the Vancouver metropolitan area.
Yeah, she's just outside.
Oh, okay, gotcha. So I remember her mentioning something about like it being beautiful around Stanley Park, and so I was like, oh, I know where that place is.
She posts pictures of hikes sometimes that just make me go, why don't I live with Kay? I just want to be, I'm just going to move into KSBO's basement. I don't care.
We live in Oregon, and after visiting British Columbia, I can say like, Oregon is like, the cheaper, like, sad cousin to British Columbia. British Columbia is gorgeous, like hands down. Like Washington and Oregon are great if you haven't visited British Columbia. Yeah. The moment you do, you're like, oh yeah, this is nice.
But I need to move. Yeah. Well, my husband and I talk sometimes about potentially moving to BC, or at least like going there for a big portion of the year or something. We can't afford to do that currently, but the goal is someday to be able to do like half the year there or something.
But,
But,
it's big. You don't have to stay in the Vancouver area. You can stay like the east part of BC or the northern part.
Yeah, we wouldn't be able to stay in the Vancouver area unless, I will call Ben and be like, Ben, I'm going to crash on your floor, and I'm sure that would be fine for a couple of days. But I think I'd probably wear out my welcome pretty quick after that, especially if I bring the family along.
Well, if he doesn't know, he doesn't know. Until he knows, it'll be fine.
Go up on his doorstep and like, I've brought 2 extra people. I'm sure this and a dog. This is fine, right, Ben?
Yeah. Ben's a nice guy. He won't.
He is, but I can't. Yeah, I wouldn't do that to him. We're not that close. I have a number of friends I would do that to, except I would tell them and they just wouldn't care. But I don't know if I'd do that to Ben. Okay, we'll move on to the next slightly irreverent question. I tried to stalk your Facebook account, as I am wont to do for these interviews. It's my standard MO. And all I learned, though, was that you clearly have a life outside of Facebook and therefore don't post that much, which is great. Good for you and well done. And also, therefore, I just learned that you have adorable children. And also that you like cricket. Like, these are my 2 things I picked up. So, what is the longest cricket match you've ever watched?
So, well, historically, there's 3 formats of cricket. Like,
okay,
it's not just one format. So there's like a 3-hour format.
Oh my gosh, yes.
There's like a single day format, and there's like a 5-day format.
What?
Yeah. And the 5-day format is fun. If you really enjoy cricket, the 5-day format is fun. So the longest I've seen a match is 5 days. There was going to be a match for 6 days, and we were all excited about that because it was supposedly, Australia at that time, this was back in 2006, the world champions going against the best of the rest of the world, and the match got finished in 3 days, and that was really but if that match had lasted 6 days, that would have been like an iconic match because it would have lasted the whole 6 days, because it was called the Super Test match. But but it just wound up finishing, like somebody just destroyed the other team, I assume. Australia destroyed the other team, so that was not really fun. So I love to root against the Aussies. So if any Australians are watching, my apologies. You guys know how ruthless your team is, so which is why the rest of the world doesn't like them. And I love to root against them. They were just too good. They were really too good at that time.
So now I'm curious about this 5-day format, or even the 3-day format. When the games last multiple days, like I've gone to events that are like tournament style, so you're watching multiple teams play at different times on different day. You see like 4 games in one day, and then you see like another like 2 or 3 games the next day, and then it's a final game on the last day. But this is not that.
This is just one game.
It's just one game. What is the schedule like? Like, how often do people stop for tea, and what is
so it begins roughly around like 10 or 11 in the morning, depending on where you are. And so I know this is going to be a little bit technical. So there's technically 90 overs in a single day. And they divide that into 3 sessions. So roughly 30 overs. Then we have lunch, which is about half an hour to 45 minutes. Another 30 overs. Then you have tea, which is about 15, 20 minutes. And then the last set of 30 overs as well. Of course, they will manipulate the time. They'll manipulate that based on if a team is doing well or not, or if there's rain or something like that. So that's roughly how it goes. A test match consists of each team will get to bat for 2 times in 2 separate innings. And the other team will then get to bat. So it's like 4 innings. You could say technically it's like there's 2 matches going on, because there's one set of innings, the other set of team batters, but it's continuous. So, even if you do well in 1 innings, you still have to continue doing that over a period of time. And that's the beauty of the test match cricket, because you got to really be good. Like, the T20 format is the 3-hour format. I could literally create a team from the United States and we could defeat the world champions on any given day. Like, it's that unpredictable. But the test match is not unpredictable because it really forces you to be excellent. It's about
consistency, right?
Consistency and really playing the cricket the way it's supposed to be played. And you cannot hide in that. In T20 cricket, possibly even in one-day cricket, there are days when somebody, who'll have an extremely good day and can win against the best team in the world. Test matches, that's really almost impossible. You can have like a good session, but you can't single-handedly win. The team, which is a better team, will always win, provided there's because it forces you to play for 5 whole days. Mentally, it's taxing. Physically, it's taxing, and it's fun to watch. And of course, boo the Aussies. So.
How many players are on a normal cricket team or ticket cream?
So 11 people per side.
Okay.
Same as most, big teams. And it's like, so at any given time when the match is going on, there'll be 2 players who'll be batting and 11 players who'll be, the opposite team will be fielding and bowling and keeping all that. So, yeah. So at any given time, besides there's 13 players on field, there's 2 set of umpires. So 15 people in all.
Okay. Right.
At any given time.
I was just wondering, because the way you were talking about batting, I was wondering how many, like if there's suddenly with like keeping in mind that there are 30 overs, which I assume have something to do with catching balls and people being out or touching the wickets or something.
Exactly that. Bowling someone out.
Bowling someone out. Okay. I was like, wow. So then how many times are you at bat in a standard?
If you get out, you get out. So you only get to bat, like unlike baseball where you can come back.
Right.
In cricket, if you in that innings, if you get out, you're out. There's no coming back.
Interesting.
So, but in the test match, because there are 2 innings, if you get out in the first innings, you still get to bat in the second innings. But yeah, of course, if you get out, you're out again. So that's it. So,
okay. But so then when you're up for bat, you're up until you get out?
Yes. Until you get out or you retire out. Like, you basically are injured, so you're retiring out. But yeah, most people will just bat till they draw, because when somebody's in that level of form.
Okay, gotcha.
Go.
Right. So that's different, because in baseball, you get a hit and you're done. Then you're not your turn anymore. But in cricket, you just keep batting.
Oh yeah, you keep hitting as much as you can, as long as you can, and all parts of the field. Unlike the baseball diamond where you have to score forwards and within the diamond, in the cricket field, just most usually an oval, you can score all around the field. If you can hit it, and if you can run, or if it goes beyond the boundary, it's 6 runs. If it crosses the boundary by bouncing before, it's 4 runs.
Yeah.
And as many times as you can run, you can get to a maximum of 4 runs.
How high do cricket scores usually go in a match? Like, if we're looking at hundreds of points, is that like?
Oh no, runs. So
sorry.
Official test record, and this is going to test my cricket knowledge. I want to say somewhere around 9. No, wait. So in a singular innings, it definitely goes beyond. Like, usually it's anywhere from 300 runs or so, but the high score, I believe, is about 600 plus runs or maybe it's 9. It's it's either 674 or 974. Because I'm missing.
It's okay. It's the 6 is either right side up or upside down.
I think it was done by Sri Lanka against India, which is why I remember that it was a brutal test match to watch, because the bowlers just kept on bowling and they kept on hitting, and so. I want to say it's somewhere like that, but yeah, it's around 300 runs. In the ODI and T20 format, it's a little bit lower because it's a limited amount of overs.
Sure.
But people, of course, there's a historic match where 435 runs were scored by the first team, and the other team scored 438, because that was just insane. So that never has been replicated, and that match was considered possibly the greatest one-day match ever.
Wow. I'm just sitting here kind of embarrassed at how little I know about cricket. I have seen a cricket match before, but I was a child and I had no idea what was going on. And I think I've really only watched the one actually in person that was happening in front of me. And I'm pretty sure it was a single day. It was not, about to be a 5-day thing. But yeah, I remember being like, oh, that's cool. Watching the action of it, but not knowing any of the rules, and my parents didn't know the rules, so no one was explaining it to me while I was watching it, and so I was just like, that looks neat, and probably looks confusing.
But it's confusing if you don't know the rules.
Well, I mean, so is any sport. I can't think of a single sport that is all that okay, soccer is pretty.
Yeah, but, I mean, it's and the funny part is because it's only only the Commonwealth countries, the ex-British Empire, will people know it, because it's it's the gift that British left us with. It's all the other horrible things.
Right, the one good thing that you guys.
Yeah, the one gift that they did. So I'll give them that. But yeah, no, it's fun fact though. Baseball was invented by the Americans to piss off the British, because baseball is basically everything you chew gum. Well, in that time, you chew tobacco, you smoke, you wore slightly colored clothing, you dived, you argued with the umpire.
Right.
the exact opposite of cricket. In cricket, you wore all whites, you didn't jump, you didn't argue the umpire,
you stopped for tea.
And you had a gentleman's game. So literally, from what I understand, like the game of baseball was invented to piss off the English in every which way and be as different as cricket as it could be.
That makes me like baseball more. Just to piss off the British. I still don't think, not to make fun of cricket, but to just piss off the English, that seems like a worthwhile goal. And I'm otherwise not really a fan of baseball. But okay, cool. I mean, this thing is like, I know rugby, like I know all the rules to rugby, but I played rugby. I played, all through university. So I have a much better understanding of rugby, whereas I've never played a cricket match. And basically, if I'm going to internalize the rules of any sport, I have to actually play it myself. And I've never played a cricket match. So here I am knowing nothing.
Fun fact about Canada actually has played in the World Cup of cricket. That is a cool feature. Yeah.
Made it to the World Cup?
Yeah.
Legit? Not just because they were the only North American team?
Well,
maybe.
They were the one of two North American teams, but they actually played in the World Cup. So kudos to Canada for doing that. The USA hasn't done that at all, but
nice.
That's okay.
Has Mexico made it to the Cricket World Cup? Okay, I was just wondering.
Mexico doesn't.
I can't imagine them playing. Well, then it's an entire country. I'm sure someone in Mexico plays cricket, but yeah, it's not I think they're super into football. Football, like not football.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine them. Not that it's a whole country. I can't imagine Mexico as replacing that with enough enthusiasm to send a team to the World Cup.
You got to thank the British again. They were so snooty that they didn't invite the other people to play cricket even. It was only if you were a Commonwealth, not Commonwealth, if you were a subject of the British Empire,
right? Yes,
were you introduced to cricket. So there's a fun story that actually Italy was at one time point. Italy was actually really excited about cricket, and the English were like, these Italian idiots are not good enough to play with us, and so the game died out in Italy. And God only knows if maybe the rest of Europe had probably discovered cricket, maybe we would have had a more thriving cricket sphere, so as to speak. But also cricket is, besides football being the most popular sport in the world, cricket is the second most popular sport thanks to the Indian subcontinent. Just with a population of 1.5 billion plus, and all the people living everywhere else in the world.
Right.
And then you add, the UK, you add Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, everything. I can roughly say cricket is the second most popular sport with the least amount of playing nations. And
that's interesting.
Yeah.
All of it is it's clear that I need to up my cricket game, because obviously if I'm going to know anything about sports at all, I should know about cricket too. In truth, I'm not much of a sports watcher. This is my thing. I love playing sports, and I would love to try cricket sometime. It looks like a blast. But I don't. American football is the most boring game in the world to watch. I can't stand watching it. It is so boring. And baseball is just a touch more interesting to me. But it's because they stop all the time. And especially as a rugby player, where I'm sorry, you got tackled, that's the beginning of the play. That's not the end of anything, right? And so I'm just used to continual motion and action in sports. So basketball is really fun to watch, and hockey, especially Olympic hockey, which doesn't ever devolve into fights, is really fun to watch. Pro hockey is less fun because it does stop a bunch. But anyway, all of that, I love that stuff. And cricket seems like it's pretty, aside from stopping for tea and stuff, it's pretty ongoing action.
I unfortunately was also, because you grew up in India, there's only you either liked it or you either loved it or you hated it, because there's no in between. In India, cricket is almost fed to you in every which way. So there's no escaping it. And of course, when you're a kid, you want to play, and you can't play. It's easiest to play. You can play literally in a small strip of space. Right. You have a small bat and ball, and you're ready to go. So it's easy. So I think same thing with football, right? It's easier to play football because you all just need is a ball, and then you kick, go. Yeah,
exactly. And it's football, not American football, but real football is so much fun for that reason, right? It's just to pick up, and it's pretty easy to just organize a game on the fly and all that stuff. And then, but American football with just stopping constantly. It's oh, somebody touched me, I gotta put the ball down. They're why? What are you doing?
It's my wife always seems to ask, she always has this observation of why do they wear so much tight clothes? that is the only game where they wear so much tight clothes. Like every other sports, like you wear like sleek clothes or you wear clothes which allow you to breathe. But why is it in American football that they wear so tight? I'm like, I don't know. I mean, they do. They must be doing something for that. But yeah,
some of it's to hold the pads in. Like there are some leg pads that would move around a lot. But then that could be an undergarment. It doesn't have to be the overgarment. Presumably though that would get hot. I don't know.
It's American football. I kind of understand it now. It took me close to like 10 years because I was watching it and I was like, okay, so this is what they're doing. I used to also live, like when I was living in Texas, I used to live like literally 2 blocks away from the Houston Texans Stadium, which was like a big deal at that time.
Right.
And so every Sunday, at that time, the team was really bad. And every Sunday there would be like this huge amount of people coming in, driving because they would be excited. And Texas football is religion, almost like religion in Texas.
Oh, it's safe to call it a religion, I think, or at least a cult, something. But anyway,
and then they would be pissed off because their team lost quite badly, and then they'd be driving in traffic jams. So I mean, it was fun to watch that enthusiasm, but it was also sad to see so many people with their hopes up and
crushed
week out. So.
Yeah. When I lived in Spain, I lived in Valencia, and I lived right across the street from the stadium.
Ooh. Oh, wow.
So we would watch the games. I could never get tickets because they always sold out long before I had any idea that the next game was happening.
Yeah.
But we'd watch them on television in our apartment, and we could hear the crowd going nuts a few seconds before anything would happen on TV. So it was just so funny to have like the live audio and then see something happen a few seconds later on TV.
It's fun. It's fun, right?
Yeah,
it's kind of fun. So,
and most of that was foot traffic, so it was a little bit less. You didn't have to worry about people getting angry and driving, but there were a lot of like very vocal crowds going in and out all the time.
Oh yeah, like Spain, Italy, they're passionate about football. Like
very
beyond. I would say they're beyond passionate, but yeah, they take their passions to a whole different level.
Yes, that is true. Professional sports are an interesting thing.
It's a good way to get off the aggression. Like, somebody had made a point that, I think it was Alexander Darwin who kind of in one of his interviews mentioned, like, he got this concept of like these, of course, we had the gladiatorial games in the past, in the past, but it's like, it's a way for people to come in and blow off steam and not have a war by basically having sports. So
exactly. It's your replacement war. Yeah. Which is why national teams are a thing. Like, but it's still, I don't know what it is about my brain that I don't get that buy-in. Like, so even the sports I enjoy watching, I don't ever feel let down or uplifted by the actions of the people on the field. I'm like, those people are playing their own sport game and I'm not in it. And so I don't actually particularly, I care, sometimes I care a little bit who wins if I have a reason to cheer for a team, but I don't have a team for any sport, even my favorite sports.
You're better than Rob J. Hayes. I was trying to talk to him about cricket and he just bluntly told me, dude, I don't follow cricket. I'm like, you're an Englishman. You live in England. How do you not follow cricket? He's like, I don't follow any sports. I'm like, okay, fine. I won't talk to you. But you're better than that.
I mean, it's hard. But it's just to get that energy, I have to be there live if I'm going to get any, but like on a TV screen, I can't even get that excited about, and I never watch the Super Bowl. Like,
oh yeah.
I used to when I was younger, like in my teens, I would watch it just to be able to talk about it socially because
it's an event, right? It's not more about it's less about the football. It's more about like the ads,
the commercials,
the commercials, the
halftime show.
It's more of that. It's like it's less to do with football. It's more of like just the NFL to show off like we have this super event to look forward to, and it doesn't matter which team, 2 teams get there, we're gonna have fun. So it's literally that.
Yes, but that kind of thing I kind of get, but my dad used to always take us to the NC2A lacrosse championships every year in Maryland, and so we would go and we'd watch the quarterfinals and the semifinals and the finals, and so it was 3 days of going to watch lacrosse, or 2 sometimes. Anyway, whatever, 2 or 3 days, and it was a big event. We'd always get sunburned. We'd go and we'd spend the entire day in the stands and eating food and getting psyched about the games, and we had certain teams we cheered for and certain teams we were hoping didn't win because they were full of jerks. But really, like our team selection mostly came down to how nice people were to each other at the end of the game. Like you can always tell when players are kind, and we were just like, those people seem nice. Yeah. Anyway, and of course then my dad had some teams that he just wanted to cheer for because he, like at school he used to go to or school he used to play against or whatever. And
so it's a big thing. It's a big thing over here, like college sports and high school sports. That's actually a cool feature of. I really love that. We didn't have that when I was growing up, but I see that over here because there are people who will follow their college teams, like they're ride or die type of people. So it's pretty fun.
It's neat. Like the enthusiasm, the level of festivity is cool. It weirds me out when people get really upset about teams losing. I'm like, nobody. Like it was a game. It's literally a game.
I'm guilty of that. I'm guilty of that all the time. Like, growing up as a cricket fan, we had so many heartbreaks from the 1990s to the early 2000s. Like it's infuriating just to watch. And I'm not alone. Like Zamil Akhtar can testify to this. I know he's a Pakistani cricket fan as well. Like his team loses a lot. Like any cricket fan who are not Australia, their teams have lost so many times badly. It scars you a little bit.
Fair enough. Well, I guess we should probably gear back a little bit towards talking about other things. Although I did have a question. I was wondering if you had also played cricket. It sounds like you played growing up, but did you also play in school?
Yeah, I played for my school. I played for my college. I played for my medical college as well.
What?
And that was it. Yeah, well, it was fun. I was not talented at it. It was like I was decent enough to always make the team.
Right.
And on my good days, I could maybe win a match. That was it. But yeah, of course, as every child, you always dream that you're going to be good at playing cricket, and then reality hits, and you're like, oh, I'm not. So I still love to play, but I haven't played now in 12 plus years.
Yeah.
So maybe one day.
But good enough to make university teams. I mean, I don't know how it is in India.
No, we had. I mean, I wouldn't call good. I mean, there's a lot of universities.
I know I know you're gonna try to downplay this hard because you always are modest. But
no. I'm not being modest. It's like because I think you're equating it to the university level over here. Like universities are not rare, but it's getting a team to that. They don't even. But for us, there is not like an intercollegiate tour. I mean, there were tournaments, but we didn't really participate. We didn't get the time to participate in them. So we just had teams for our classes. So I made those teams. So it's not like the team over here, like somebody who's playing over here,
right?
Like the baseball team or something like that. So
but if you made the team, presumably there are people who did not make the team.
Yes.
But there was a cutoff. So
yes.
And you surpassed that level.
Yes.
So you were at least a competent cricket player.
Yes, I was decent. I will not. I know how to hold the bat. I know how to bowl. I can keep wickets. So I'm decent. I'm a decent fielder as well. I'm not a liability on the field. So, or at least I wasn't when I was playing.
Sure. I love that I just had to pry an admission of competence out of you. Maybe what it looks like.
I'm not competent in almost anything. That's my mantra.
That's not true. Oh my gosh. All right. Moving on because I can't hear you berate yourself anymore. Let's go on. Question number 4. And we vaguely touched on this earlier, but your job seems very intense. You have young children. How do you make time for reading and reviewing and blogging? Like what?
Well, it keeps me sane because if I don't have that, I have nothing else. And it's sad to say, I love my family and I really like my job as well. But if I just do those two things after a time point, I believe I'll get so frustrated. I'll need an outlet. And I have loved reading since I was a child. That is the one thing I can remember that I always loved. And it didn't matter what book I was reading because when I was growing up, I didn't really have access to a lot of stuff. So I would read some comics, I would read stories. Plus my grandmom, she would read out, the mythological stories to me. So that was a huge thing. And she had books in her mother tongue, which is Marathi. And I'm not a fluent, I speak very fluently. I understand it very nicely, but my reading was not so good. So I still try to read those books, but they're really complex. And so it's basically FOMO because if I don't do it, somebody else will, and then they'll get to speak about it, and then I'll be like, I haven't read that. So no, it's dropped down, thankfully, which is why. With other people, I can tag along to their glories. If they say they read it, then I'm like, oh, they can tell me about it. it's basically just to stay sane because, my kids they're young and they're energetic. So it's, it takes energy out. And then my job, like you mentioned, it thankfully it's like, it's in oncology clinical research, but it's not in that intense. But it does get, sometimes it can be a little bit draining. And but yeah, so like it's not my dream job, but it's a good job and I love it. And so, which is why I need to read. That's how my mind recharges. Like I could literally spend a week just in like a chair or like in bed, just reading, and I'll still be happy come Monday morning if I have finished the book. If I've not, then I'm
gonna try to sneak it in. But I get that. I feel that. I definitely spend full days reading and can't stop. My brain's like, no, must finish. Like it's 4 a.m. It doesn't matter. Finish the book. What is your dream job? You mentioned about what is your dream job? You said just
probably something like a slush file editor, or maybe the person who tells Netflix executives like this book, make this into a TV show, or because I'm pretty sure there must be something like that. Or like a literary agent or something like that, because nowadays literary agents can be like because they can pitch to various books to various companies, and or at least even if it doesn't get made, but it's still the author gets paid, and then the agent gets paid. But that would be like an amalgamation of that would be my dream job, because that's the one thing which I know I'm good at. I can tell what's a good book versus what's a decent book or what's not such a good book. So I wish I could do that, but of course. I'm in the wrong field because I've studied to be something else. So it's like I'm gonna do this, and I just do this on the side. Then.
Study schmuddy. You can definitely. I mean, like my degree's in Spanish. I'm not writing books in Spanish. I'm writing English books, and they are they're fictional.
But see, your brain can think, and your brain has kind of like an important all of that. Like your brain knows English and Spanish. That's really good for your neuronal health, so as to speak.
Sure. I mean, and it's like I speak other languages too, but it's not like that is not my degree has nothing to do with what I do for a living right now. I'm like the bulk of my money is actually from graphic design, and I have zero training in that. That is purely self-taught.
Yeah, but see, that's your passion, and then you're also an author, so that's two passion, that's two talents. That's amazing.
Well, author is my passion. Graphic design I just sort of fell into because becoming an indie author, I needed to have some graphic design skills. Originally, just for like promotional stuff. I was hiring other people to do my art and design and stuff, but then eventually, as I got better at design stuff for making ads, I was like, oh, maybe I could actually do my own cover typography. And then I was like, oh, maybe I could actually do the whole layout.
That's pretty cool because you have some really terrific typography, especially that you are doing it yourself. It doesn't look like because there's some stuff that some typography, but we both know we have seen which will be like we kind of feel bad for the author because they're like
right, because they probably don't have a budget.
Yeah, it's due to financial reasons, but you feel bad for them because it's that bad. Or it's not that eye-catching. Let's put it that way. It's not that eye-catching, but yours is not that. Like,
thank you.
If I didn't know you, I would be like, oh yeah, they probably, she probably paid someone, and she's got a nice cover and she's got a nice design and everything like that. So,
well, thank you. Appreciated. And I think, but it's just funny to me that other people pay me money to make covers for them. That's still hilarious. I'm like, okay. I will take your money and present a cover, and people keep loving them. I'm like, okay, great, this is working out.
That's good.
But I'm self-taught. I just did a bunch of YouTube tutorials and then practiced a whole bunch doing my own stuff, and then originally selling covers really, really cheap and working my way up. But anyway, point is, you could absolutely get into that field. You're already halfway there by being a blogger and reviewer and stuff. And I feel like if we get the right people's attention, anyone watching this, did you hear that? He wants to tell you which books to make movies, and he'd do a great job. So,
I don't know. Nobody's gonna listen to me.
I don't know about that.
I'll probably just, when I die, I'll be like screaming, they should have made that book series into a movie or a TV show. So that'll be my end chat.
Well, but those could be your final words, even if you've been in that field for 20 years, right? Because I'm sure at some point you can say that as much as you want, and it doesn't mean it's going to happen.
I know.
Okay. Well, thank you. That was very insightful, and I enjoyed learning that about you. That's awesome. Let's talk a little bit about SPIFBO or SPFBO, depending on who you ask. As my understanding is that you've been involved since pretty much the beginning, right? Like the very beginning. So, but how did, okay. All right. So tell me, how did that happen? How did you either get roped into SPIFFO or volunteer for SPIFFO, depending on how that went? Like, what's the story?
Basically, I have been reviewing since 2009. So, I of course got introduced to Mark Lawrence. I was reviewing his books and I knew of him. I had interacted with him a little bit. He was really nice. And so I knew of him. Of course, I'm going to toot FBC's horn at this bit.
Yeah, do it.
We at Fantasy Book Critic have actually been reviewing indies before the word indie became popular. So, Michael J. Sullivan, before his his rise to orbit, he actually self-published his books. And when I say we, I don't mean me, but Liviu and Cindy Hannickman, two of our original reviewers, they actually reviewed all those books. The reviews are still there, which is why I was hoping that Google would take our blog away, but we reviewed Anthony Ryan's Blood Song, before it became popular. Liviu and I reviewed that, and we loved it. I reviewed David Dalglish. For those who don't know, David Dalglish was, before he was a fantastic Orbit author, he was equally fantastic at self-publishing.
Yeah.
He randomly had approached Fantasy Book Critic for a review of his new series. It was like Shadow, Dance of Cloaks. I read it, I loved it. So we had been reviewing indie books. They were of course not that popular, but we were like, read this book, it's good, and of course you get like a whole thing. So out of the blue, one day in 2015, Mark Lawrence kind of emails me, and I think it was a Facebook message, maybe it was Facebook message, but I could be wrong. It's either email or Facebook, but he basically reached out to me and he's like, hey, I'm planning to, kind of do this competition. We might do maybe 100, 250, 200 books, something like that. Will you be a judge? And I was like, sure, yeah, why not? Because it's Mark Lawrence. He's not a small-time author, but also I like the concept of like, there, at that time, this 2015, there was a few indie authors coming up here and there, and you kind of knew. And by the time, Rob J. Hayes was also published, and it was basically I discovered his books in 2013 as well. So that was 2014, 2013. I want to say that was so that I knew I was pumped for indie books, but of course there were still a lot more rougher edged books than diamonds. So I was like, okay, yeah, let's go. And then, so I want to say there's 3 of our blogs which have been there from the first edition: Fantasy Faction, Fantasy Book Critic, and Lens Books blog. So the 3 bloggers have been there since the first edition. Sarah Chorn, Bookworm Blues, I think she also kind of initiated this, by speaking to Mark about that. Okay. So that's how the idea blossomed. 10 blogs came together. Mark opened up. We got, I think, a little over 250 entries, because that was his cutoff. That is still the cutoff. Like, it's like if you get 250 entries, the contest happens. And then we go up till 300. So I think the first time around we only got like 270, 280 or something like that. The numbers might be off. And then from next year, it definitely reached closer to 300. And from 2016 onwards, SPFU just took a wild jump. And then of course it's been going up and up and up. And so I'm so glad for that. So that's the story.
Awesome. It's so cool that you have been there from the start. And you do, at least my impression on this side of things, is that you do a ton of work organizing SPIFFO, which, because I mean, like, and so does so do a lot of the blogs. But I mean, it's a lot. I don't know. It has seemed to me in certain years where like you've done a lot of the posting about.
Oh yeah.
Like letting people know what's happening next and saying, like the form's going to open in a week and here's some FAQs and stuff like that. Like you do a lot of those pieces.
I like to do that because I just put myself, like, if I was an author, I would need that. Like I would be looking out for that person. Like, where's the step? Like that's how my mind works. Like I'm that dumb that I need step-by-step instructions. It's always helpful.
It's not being dumb.
I'm telling you, I look at it that way. That's why I do those. So that's why I did that a couple of years ago. Like, I just thought of like, okay, let me just put like, step-by-step instructions of like what it would be. So then I posted on the Facebook page, and then I thought, okay, why don't I put even the time clock? Because people have different time zones. So I did that, and so the last couple of years, I have enjoyed making up those threads and just posting them. Because again, even if 2 people find it helpful, it's great. If nobody finds it helpful, that means people are doing it on their own.
I think way more than 2 people are finding it helpful. I think it's safe to say that probably like 298 people are finding it helpful.
SPFPO has reached a critical mass, I think, by now that it's become popular enough that people. This year it got filled in like 8 hours.
8 hours,
45 minutes.
Yeah, like under 9 hours.
Cool. Yes, that was like it. We did not expect it at all. Like honestly.
It's fun. So there's this funny thing in author circles. There's the hype around Spiffbo, and there are rumors that start every year about how last year Spiffbo filled up in an hour, and we're all like, no, that didn't happen. But every year that sort of snowballs it so that more people apply right at the start, and they're like, oh, I'm going to miss it if I don't get in. And in addition, more people are hearing about it, more people are wanting to apply in general. And so of course it gets earlier and earlier, but it's just really funny to see having like, I mean, the first year the year I entered Blade's Edge, I had only heard of the contest at the end of the previous year's contest. Like I found out probably, I don't know, like a week or so before the winner was announced for the previous year.
Yeah.
And so I watched that happen, and then it was John Kong, JC Kong was the one who told me about the competition and said, "Oh, hey, are you going to enter?" And I was like, "What is it? Why would I enter this? What does it cost?" You know? And he's like, "No, it's free, and it's cool, and like if you can get your books noticed in it, it can be really useful." And I was like, oh, "Okay, cool." So. And then I submitted, and that was the last year that we were doing emails. So I actually scheduled an email in advance to send at the exact time to Mark's address, right? And so I did that. So I was actually like, if you look at that year's entries, Blade's Edge is like maybe 10th or 20th or something, because I was like, those of us who had scheduled emails and like all showed up at like noon on the dot or whatever. Because I also knew I wasn't going to be awake when it actually opened, because it's UK time, right? And so I was like, I'm starting to be asleep. I am scheduling that email. Anyway, so it got in really fast. But so I knew, and then I remember us watching over like the next 2 or 3 days as the entries all filled in. But even the next year, people were like, "Oh yeah, it filled up in like an hour," and I was like, "No, it didn't. No, it did. I swear to you, it did not." I remember at least the day after, and possibly 2 days after, that we were still waiting for the last like 10 entries or something. It was in 2015.
First 4 or 5 editions, it took about 2 to 3 days to fill it. Yeah, I think the 5th or 6th edition was when it kind of gotten filled in like 24 to 30 hours. Last year, it got filled in 23 hours, and we were all excited. We were like,
only 24 hours?
Under a day. And so this time we're thinking like, the judges place friendly, no price bets of like, and so it was anywhere from 18 to 22, 25, something like that.
Right.
Under 9 hours. Next year, I don't know. I mean, next year, and so I remember because like Mark had just made a quick post, like 146 entries or something like that came in the first hour or so.
Right.
Or because it's like, the moment it popped up, everybody just submitted, and it's like it's an easy Google form, so that's a plus. So and next year it's going to be 6 hours or something.
Watch it be like one. It's finally going to meet the hype. Eventually, like people have been saying for years, Spiffbo filled up in like an hour last year, and it's finally going to actually happen. It's just
great for the bloggers, because we are like, when can we get the books? What are the books? Which books? What books? So
this time Yale hardly had to wait. It's so cool. It's a great contest in so many ways. It does so many wonderful things for authors. So thank you and everyone else involved for making it happen, because
it's Mark and the bloggers, everybody else, like it's his idea.
I mean, it's definitely Mark, but it's also you and all the you're one of the bloggers. You can't discount yourself from that.
Yeah, one of them, one of the many, one of the few amongst the many. So
but thank you, because I got a little taste of what it's like being a judge, because I started off being an SPSFC judge, and then quickly got overwhelmed by the amount of reading involved, because the way SPSFC has it set up to strikes me as awesome in terms of fairness to all the authors, but is totally overwhelming in terms of as a judge for reading. But it wouldn't have actually been that overwhelming if I'd actually managed to stay on top of. But I basically I read through half of the entries for our blog for the 10 to 20% that you're required to read, and then got caught up in all my other work and stopped for a while. And then by the time things were about to be due, and I was like, I cannot possibly do this, and I'm like this close to a nervous breakdown getting this Kickstarter ready, and I had to pull out, and I felt really bad. But anyway, it's a ton of reading, it's a ton of work. Y'all do it year after year for nothing, and it's awesome, and thank you so much. Okay, what is for you the best part of Spiffbo? What is your favorite thing about it?
Oh, the books. Always finding new books. Like we, at Fantasy Book Critic, we at least try to do, like in the start, we'll do kind of like a quick one or two posts of like the most exciting looking titles, just based on the blurb and the covers. So it's that, like, it's always the anticipation, because the indie field, that's the beauty of it. Anything, you can write anything, and if it's good enough, even if you slap a decent cover, like, it doesn't have to be fantastic, it has a decent cover, it can get noticed, or at least if it's in the competition, one of us will look at it. So for us, or at least for me, I personally, I can't speak for everybody else, but I can at least see from what we talk about in the Judges Discord channel that it's the excitement of discovering new authors, new books, or maybe an older author suddenly having, just writing a new style of book or new fantasy book and just discovering or getting introduced to it. So it's amazing, and that feeling is never going to go away. So that's like a huge plus. Which new author, which new finalist, who's going to be the finalist? And
that's so exciting. I always am excited to see the finalists. I'm also always excited to see the semifinalists, and even just actually, like, I like to peruse. It's hard to do because I don't like reading reviews because I hate any spoilers at all, and it's really hard to read any kind of review and not have certain things spoiled. So I don't read much of the reviews themselves until after I've read the books, and then I like comparing my opinion to someone else's, and that's fun. But I get excited just like looking at titles and covers and blurbs and seeing how certain reviewers rank books or talk about them, if they're giving them scores or not. And not all, because not all the blogs give scores to the earlier reviews and stuff, so it's to sort of like pick through that. But it's neat to see what's there, and it's a good like filter, even just not that there's any quality filtration that happens in that getting submitted, but it's just like, at least now I'm just looking at 300 books instead of the 3,000 that are published every day, right? Or whatever.
Or you might not even see that book, right? Because if it's on this competition, you might not even have eyes on that. So I completely agree. Like there's so many people who I know I had like, I should tell you this, like I had kind of seen your book before. I hadn't read it, but I had seen it. I knew of your book and before.
I'm surprised.
But there were so many authors, like Senlin Essence would never have heard of it. Not Josiah Bancroft, like the winner of the second SPFBO, The Grey Bastards, Jonathan French.
Oh yeah.
Maybe I would have found it. Maybe I would have, like, there's so many books. But even like the smaller authors, like, for example, oh dear God, why am I forgetting his name? D.P. Williscroft, like, he's a guy who has written like really fascinating fantasy books. But of course, if it not for the SPFU, I would have probably not discovered him. And this is just one of the few I can think of right now. There's so many authors.
T.M. Baumgartner's Shift Happens it's a humorous UF entered in, was it last year's SPFU or 2 years ago? I think it was last year's. I don't know if it even made semifinalists, but it was hilarious. I read it. I tried to do a fake SPFU judging, so I like randomly selected 30 books and tried to go through them all. And I picked that up, and I was just going to read the first 10% to see if I liked it, but I just flew through the entire book, and I loved it. It was hilarious, and I feel like it didn't get much of a spotlight shown on it at all because whoever had it in their batch, it wasn't necessarily their thing. Oh, actually, is that even true? I can't remember who had it. It might have gotten a small amount of hype. It might have even made semifinalists, but it definitely didn't make the finals. But it was,
what was the name again?
The author is T.M. Baumgartner, and Shift Happens.
I'm gonna check it out.
I think you might like it. It's fun. It's funny. The main character is a 40-something woman who describes herself as frumpy, I think. But definitely, like, the vibe is not, she's not like out there with stunning good looks winning people over with her charm. She's out there just being a sensible person and like getting stuff done because she's persistent and sensible. Like, it's really, it's funny, and the way it deals with
Shift Happens. I'm gonna check it out. I mean, I'm tired. Like, I love urban fantasy, and I was like glad for the urban fantasy boom of the early 2000s, but I'm tired of reading the same attractive female wearing stuck in a horrible situation, and of course the vampires, the werewolves, and everything. It's different. I'm all for it.
It is different. It's different, and it's funny, and I enjoyed the heck out of it. I thought it was a great, especially as a pandemic read. It's fun. It still tackles some deep themes over the course of the whole book, but it is very entertaining, I thought. So I recommend it to people. That is one of the less read gems from that SPFBO that I really enjoyed.
I will check it out. I need to finish a few other things first, but I will.
Sure. Oh yeah. I'm sure TBR is huge, but anyway, and I don't expect you to just read it on my recommendation, but if it seems appealing to you, I really enjoy
No,
it.
I looked at it. I liked it because at a quick glance of it, like, the cover and the blurb which I read, it seems interesting because literally it says 56-year-old Angela.
It's mid-50s. There we go. Yeah.
It's like if you have somebody who's like, an older protagonist, that's interesting because that's a harder sell. So, and the cover actually has an older lady as well, so that's pretty cool.
Yep. And it's just, she's very no nonsense, and it's just, I found it delightful. I don't know. Okay, so that is definitely the best part. What is the most frustrating part of SPIFFO for you?
Well, like you mentioned, sometimes titles it's a randomness of SPFPO, right? Like, it's like Mark does his best to basically, randomly allocate every titles. And of course, we as bloggers will tell, like, if there's any conflicts. Like, for example, if you're friends with the author, we are like, well, not beta it, but like maybe, we have helped him edit or help her or help them edit or something like that. So all those conflicts as well. But sometimes, some titles get distributed to bloggers who are perhaps not the right fit for it.
Right.
The one thing which can come to my mind the most, because that was a title I loved, was Kings of Paradise by Richard Bell. It was an incredible book, but unfortunately, it did not work for the blogger, which is perfectly fine, because I think it was Nicole Evans, sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. She was perfectly all right to not have it work for her, and it crashed. There was Rachel Aaron's Nice Dragons Finish Last.
Oh, really?
It was an SPFPO. It did not work for Quillery and her, Sally Quill and her crew.
Oh, wow.
Knocked out. Oh, and the biggest shocker of them all, in the first SPFPO fantasy faction, I cannot forgive them for this. They had James Islington, the Orbit author. He basically had published The Shadow of What Was Lost as an indie book. It was in the first SPFPO. Not a lot of people know that. I should have it. Oh dear God, is it over? No, I have even Winter's The Rage of Dragons. The self-published copy over here.
Right. Okay.
So for people who love this, I have this. But I also have his book, as a self-published edition. It was entered in the first SPFPO, and I read it. And and the funny part was that he actually had he had reached out to us as Fantasy Book Critic. He'd sent us the e-copy. I had actually read the book, but I of course could not review it at that moment. I loved it, and then I found out it was not the finalist, and of course I was shocked. But of course it made sense because it did not work for them, which is
sure. Yep.
But like, it's things like this. The randomness of this sometimes robs so many interesting titles, because it's just literally luck in that sense of when that title lands. And now thankfully Mark has kind of, from the second edition, again thanks to Senlin Ascents, because Senlin was such a great book.
Right.
He has come up with the concept of Senlin safety net. And I know a lot of authors might not know about this, but it's basically when a blogger judge has two awesome books, like both of them would be finalists, if not for the other. They're going to nominate one book as the finalist, and the other book gets offered to the other teams, saying that, hey, here's a potential finalist. If you find that your 30 books perhaps are not doing it for you, or do not have that special thing, you can read this book and then decide if you want to make this a finalist. So my so-called small frustration is that the randomness, and maybe because I know Senlin Safety Net has only been used once, again by Fantasy Book Critic. Again, I do not mean to toot or Han, but Devin Madsen's oh dear God, what was her?
We Ride the Storm.
Yes, We Ride the Storm. It was Booknest, Ascendant Safety Net option by Booknest. And we read it and we loved it, and we were like, this is going to be our finalist. So it is my hope that maybe other bloggers keep an open mind towards Ascendant Safety Net. I know it's harsh to the lot of 30 authors, but I'm not saying that they should just use it outright. But if maybe your lot isn't that interesting, keep an open mind to the Ascendant Safety Net, because there might be a really great book which deserves to be in the finals.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, it is hard, the things that you get stacked against, right? Like, if Blade's Edge, for example, had been in the same lot as, say, Sword of Kaigen, there's absolutely no way that Blade's Edge would have eked out Sword of Kaigen to make it to the finals, right?
It depends on a judge. A judge who would have might have liked Blade just for simplicity, but yet I don't want to say simplicity. So here, I'm not knocking.
No, it's okay. It's very compared, relatively speaking. Yeah,
it's a straightforward story. It's a straightforward story. Tiger jump is all over the place. It goes back in time. It shows, Misaki in a younger age. So in that complexity. But if a judge did not like that, they'd be like, I like Blade's Edge because this is fantastic, but this is not for me. So
theoretically that could have happened, but at the same time, the way I think of it is just that, like, if I'd been assigned to any other blog, I don't think Blade's Edge necessarily would have made the finals, and I was just lucked out that Quillery really liked it. That was just that's just luck. Like, it's not, I feel like there's any level, exactly. But it's also, it's the beauty and it's also the curse, right? Like, you were just talking about, like, the frustration behind it, because so I'm very lucky personally, but there are so many other books that were in other blogs that are just as good as Blade's Edge or better, but didn't get picked up because they were up against Sword of Kaigen or they were up against whatever else. Like, it's just it's very hard. What are you going to do? And it's fine. And that's like going into. So I submitted Cyrus Claw 2 years ago, whatever, last year. No, it had to have been last year. Anyway, and it got cut in. It didn't even make the semifinals, which was fine. I knew going in that could happen because depending on how things went, and sure enough, the blog that I was assigned to split into five or six.
It landed with us first.
Oh, yeah, first it landed with you.
Yeah, and then we had to let it go because, again, the conflict of interest.
Right, exactly. I was like, no, I think we are buddies. I don't think it's okay. I have a feeling it might be like, slightly biased in my favor. I don't know. I mean, I wasn't thinking you'd like make it a finalist if you didn't like it, but it just, But meanwhile, so it got sent to a different blog, and then it got sent to, even within that blog, there were a bunch of other bloggers who knew me well enough that they felt they had to give it to this new person who was actually Bookborn. They were like, Bookborn doesn't know Virginia at all, so she'll get it. And she really enjoyed it, but just like it wasn't her favorite out of the 5 she was given. She liked one other book better. And so, I mean, at least one other book, but I don't know how many books she liked better, but she gave it a nice favorable review, but then she liked one book better. And so that was her semifinalist. And so that was it. Sort of like Cyrus Claw was out, and that's totally fine. I knew going in that that's how SwiftBow works, and I wasn't going to take it personally at any level. But I feel it's hard to communicate that to other authors if they haven't been through the SwiftBow experience, because
I mean,
it feels like it should be 100% merit-based, and it's like it tries to. It partially is, and it's partially luck.
Yeah, Mark talks about this, like, it's a brutal competition because it has a 97% failure rate, like, and only 3 people of the past, I don't know, 67 or below. Actually, I calculated this. There have been 69 finalists so far in 7 editions of SPFPO, and only 3 people have repeated, their finals appearance.
Right.
The first person was Rob J. Hayes. He won one, and he repeated with Never Die. He was with, with you when you were the finals in the 5th edition. Then Michael R. Fletcher did an incredible thing. He consecutively finals with, last year, with a couple of years ago with Blackstone Hard, and last year with Norulska Groans.
Right.
And special kudos to Ben Galley. The finalist in the first SPFPO edition, and he was the finalist in the 7th one. So he's been the finalist with, like, the most amount of time. So
widest.
So kudos to him too. But it is so hard. It is so hard.
Well, I mean, there's a massive luck component to it.
Unfortunately, but that's just it.
Because I can guarantee you that Cyrus Claw is a better book than Blade's Edge, because I've written 7 books in between them. Like, it's just, and I mean, if it's not, then I'm failing as a writer because I'm not getting any better. But I'm pretty sure I'm getting better. I think it's safe to say it's a better book. But it didn't. It got cut before it even made the first round, and that's fine. Like, I knew that going in, and I wasn't upset about it. But trying to explain that to authors who are in it at the time, they're like, it's a little hard, right? They're just like, no, but it's if it's good enough, it'll at least make the semifinals. I'm like, not guaranteed. But anyway, it's all good. It's just, but I can see why that would be frustrating as a judge, and it's a little bit frustrating as an author too. But it's also just one of those things, right? Like, it's a free competition, and it does amazing things for so many people. Like, who's going to complain?
I mean,
everyone can have their money back.
It's one of those things, because even we as judges have our favorites. Like, of course, they are with other blogs. So we are on tenterhooks. Like, will our favorite make the finals? Right. Will that be even selected, or will they, crash and burn? And of course, you don't want to not influence it, but you don't want to let them put undue pressure on them. Like, hey, that's my favorite book, or that's my favorite author. You don't want to do that as well. So it's like, it's just one of those things about the competition which makes it so fun. and exciting, but also brutal on the authors, because it's like,
well, and the reviewers too. Those choices are hard. It's not fun to like
I mean,
have to make that choice either.
but you know what? I honestly feel like it's harder for the authors because you have written something from your blood, sweat, and tears and your imagination, and then you're putting it out in the world to judge. No reviewer has done that. Like, I write a review, maybe 20 people read it, and then out of those 20 people, maybe 10 people don't agree, 10 people are like, I don't care for it. That's okay. It doesn't matter, because it's like, it's a review of something else. When you put out a book, it's out there forever. People are going to read it, people are going to judge it, and then of course in this competition, it is literally judging it, and then people will come with their own baggage, their own mental state, their own preferred taste. And so if you write something which you think is good, but then they are viewing it through their own lens, and that's harder too. So no reviewer has it as hard as the author. So kudos to all the authors who appeared in this competition and are willing to put their books out. So honestly,
well, it's kind of you to say so, but I also feel like the judges put in a ton of time and don't get compensated for it, and authors, at least, we do benefit from the extra eyes for the most part. There are exceptions. There's a couple authors whose reviews really don't help and actually actively hurt, especially if they're doing well already. But for the most part, SPIFFO is a benefit to anybody. Even those negative reviews can sell books. So it's all good. I can really only think of one exception. But anyway, but yeah, it makes sense. But again, thank you and all the judges for putting in the work that you do. Okay, back to you specifically. Seriously, you do so much for the indie SFF community, and you have small kids, and you work a lot. Do you ever sleep? And how are you one of the kindest people out of the entire SFF community on top of that? You are so kind and generous. For everyone watching at home, you donate money to QuaranCon, you donate your time to SPIFFO, you're constantly supporting these projects. Like, if you like an author, you're so great about shouting about their books to the world. It's awesome, and you're so kind and generous with your time. You're talking to me right now, like when you could be reading or sleeping or hanging out with your family. How did that happen?
Well, why are you so nice? Shouting about the authors, it's in my self-interest. If I love the author, if they're successful, they're going to keep writing, so I get more books for them. So that's purely self-interest.
Purely selfish. Okay, all right.
Purely selfish reasons. No, honestly, I'm not doing anything different than what most of the bloggers do. There are a ton of other bloggers who are doing much more than me, who, I would say I'm lucky in this sense because FBC has grown. I am standing on the shoulders of my predecessors, Robert Thompson, Cindy Hanickman, Livio Suchu, Fabio Fernandez. And so because of them, the blog grew. And yes, I added somewhat to it. So now the blog can maybe shine a better light on things. So with that being said, it's like, if I can find a book, if I can help it in some way, why not? Like, why wouldn't I do that? That's my key. Like, and of course, self-interest plays up. If I love the book, I want more. If the book sells, the writer will have to write more. So, it's all in my self-interest in that way. So,
yeah, sure.
So, I do, and that's why. And I don't know how. I honestly don't know. And this is not me kidding. Like, the Twitter followers seems to have grown, and it grown and grown and grown, which is a good thing. So if I can shout out about books, maybe a few people of those who follow me will listen to them or look at it or at least in it. So it's kind of the same thing, if I can, why not? And there's plenty of other people who do wonderful reviews. I like to share those reviews too, so that way they can also, other bloggers can be like, oh yeah, this is a great review. So things like that. Honestly, there's nothing. I am sounding like a broken horn, but I am doing what anybody else would do, which people have been doing. So
I know, like, I'm not saying you are unique in all the bloggers of the world for what you do, but I don't know, you're so nice about it. And also, you do a lot. And yes, there are other people who also do a lot. And I'm hoping to interview more of them too.
Yes.
But there's plenty of people who don't do any of that. They just read a book and they like it, and they maybe don't even review it, even on Amazon. But review books you like, people. No, but yeah, you have a lot going on and you still make time to do it, and I think that's awesome. So I'm sorry, you're gonna have to accept the compliment. You are kind and generous, and you help a lot of authors, especially indie authors. So thank you, and stop arguing.
I will not, but I'm the same as most bloggers are. So yeah, if you call me content generous, you would be calling most of us, and it's like feeding our addiction. We are all addicted to books, so it's like if we can feed our addiction healthily and get something out of it and help the authors, okay, why not? Why wouldn't you do that? So
Fair
that's
enough.
literally it.
No, and I do want to say thank you to all book bloggers, especially those who are willing to read indie, and especially those who are, what do I want to say, even-handed in their reviews. Like, I really love all of the book bloggers who just make a point of, at least even when they don't like something, couching it in terms of their taste, rather than trying to suggest that a book is outright bad. Because certainly, like, personally, the more I read, the more I'm like, so much of this is subjective. And if something isn't just hateful, like, why poop on it? But anyway, but I appreciate that about you and a lot of the other bloggers, just period in the world and in our like corner of the indie SFF community. It's really lovely, and thank you.
You all are feeding my addiction, so I should be the one thanking you. So
all right, fine. We can just go back and forth thanking each other if you want. All right, let's talk a little bit about the pandemic. I basically, this entire channel has come into existence since the pandemic, because QuaranCon started because of the pandemic, and then the interviews continued. And so I tend to talk to everyone who comes on about how the pandemic has affected their reading, writing, etc. So how about you? Has the pandemic affected your reading or reviewing preferences, or your habits for reading and reviewing at all?
It did. Definitely it did in 2020. Like, I kind of actually slowed down even more. I actually started reading more. Then I was going back to my favorites a lot more. Like, I reread so many of my series, even if they're darker books or anything, that I still reread them because
just comfort.
It was the comfort read aspect of it. I'm not a writer, so I can't really speak to that. But yeah, my reviews were definitely at the slower side. Everything was just slowed down because, of course, it is still kind of like a once in a lifetime event. You did not know. We had to work. The kids were at home,
right?
Trying to manage everything. So everything was just slowed down. Thankfully, last year, we were a little bit better. Plus, my in-laws were over here as well, so we got to hang
that's nice.
Them. So that was that was more fun. So in that, it's been like a good and like mixed bag sort of, so to speak. Yeah, my reviews did take a dip after 2020, a little bit more in 2021, maybe so to speak. Now they seem to be coming up a little bit more, so I'm glad for that. I'm hoping that it continues, but the election season is coming up again, and it's it's not going to be fun because it's just annoying, the amount of ads and everything that I wish I was one of those people who could just switch all of it, but I can't. So I get bombarded, and I just have to deal with it. So I'll deal with it, but
that's a lot.
Possibly, hopefully there'll be some more good books to lose myself.
Hopefully. Did the pandemic change which books you read? You said you did a lot of rereads, and I get that. When you got back to reading new stuff, did it switch what you were interested in reading?
Not a lot, but I did notice that I read a lot less grimdark and darker fiction. Like, previously, I would be like, there's only one author that has ever terrified me in my life because of the way she wrote. And it is a credit to her, but she was the scariest author, a non-horror author who wrote the scariest stuff.
Oh, wow.
I think I actually started reading a lot less darker fantasy and grimdark fantasy. With of course some exceptions. Like, if like somebody like Michael R. Fletcher came out with this book, I would be reading it. If there was, but most newer authors who, if they had said grimdark, I wouldn't be jumping like I would previously. Yeah, more so fun fantasy, any adventure fiction, anything to like distract myself from the abnormality of the real world helps. So anything like that, that'd be fine.
That makes sense. I've done the same. I've cut out a lot of grimmer and darker stuff. I have to like pace. I used to read a ton, or at least a good portion of grimdark and darker stuff, and it was fine. But then, like, it's gotten to be less and less. Even actually, just since having a kid, I started reading less of it, and then, like, since the pandemic, way less. To the point where, like, for a good year and a half there, I didn't read anything darker than like a light romance. But then
No, it's perfectly fair, right? You
yeah.
got to do what your mind wants you to do. So no,
Yeah.
that perfectly makes sense. Like I probably might have missed out on some stuff, but hopefully maybe the future will catch up. That's all I can hope for.
Yeah, I have a lot of friends who write grimdark, were like really great grimdark that I want to read theoretically because I know I would love it. Like 5 years ago, me would have loved it. 2 years ago, me probably would have loved it, but now me is like,
no, that makes. I mean, you can. The books are out. You can probably read them sometime later.
Exactly. Yeah.
But maybe not right now. That's okay.
Yeah.
You can read some other stuff. There's lots of grimdark stuff. Like that's literally staring across me from over here.
But it's like, so like Alicia Lonsdale-Burke's books, right? When as we were in SPIFBO 5, I was trying to read all 10 finalists, and I didn't finish until like the end of 2020, I think. But and Alicia's was one that I put off until like December of 2020, and then and I loved it. I loved her book so much, Blood of Heirs, and then I started reading the sequel a few months ago and was loving it, but I was also like getting anxious, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna have to put it down for a little while and go back to it, and I haven't gone back to it yet, but I will. Like, I love it. Her writing's amazing, and I love that story, and I really want to finish it, but I can't do it right now. And it's just, and it's not even, hers aren't even that dark compared to some of the stuff, right? But it's like,
they
have
a horror
aspects.
Yeah, but she kudos to her. She recently finished her trilogy, if I'm not wrong, just like maybe a month or so ago, or maybe 2 months ago. But yeah, kudos to her. She writes fantastic. I'm actually waiting. She had kind of mentioned that maybe she's going to write about like a pirate, like it's set in the same world, but maybe she's going to write about like a pirate captain or something like that.
Yeah.
I'm actually excited for that if she does write that, because again, you know, I should apologize to her. I only read book one of her because again the same thing happened. Like, you know, when I read book one as part of this PFPO, I wanted to read book two, but then of course things happened, and then when the pandemic hit, it was just like, oh, I will read it maybe sometime later. So.
Exactly. Yeah, it's hard, right? There's just enough dark stuff happening that you're like, oh, especially, and like the end of book one ends on that note, and you're like, oh, and anyway. But I love her stuff, and book two was starting off great, and I'm really excited to finish it. But I was like, oh, I got like maybe a quarter or a third of the way through book two and was really loving it, but then I was just like getting so anxious because I knew bad stuff was coming, and I was like, I put it down and come back to it later.
You know, maybe you should try this. One of the things which I picked up was like, you probably might know her. There's this author, J.A. Andrews. She wrote like a prequel to her original trilogy, and the books 1 and 2 are out. Books actually 3 is coming out, I think, or already has
very soon. It's it comes Phoenix out like Rising. Next week. Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. That's trilogy of hers is fantabulous. Like, it's not dark, it's hopeful. It focuses on like a sister trying to save her sisters who have gone into opposite directions, and it's set in this a classical epic fantasy world. Like, maybe that'll work for you, because that worked for me during the pandemic. Like, I discovered it. I didn't discover it, but I basically read it last year. And I like, even though they're big chunky books, I ran through books 1 and 2 because they were so immersive. They kept me entertained, they kept me excited. And even though it dealt with I don't want to say dark, but it dealt with some heavy subjects, but they were still, her writing was so nice that it was not like mentally taxing.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I've heard really good things about that series, and I think
Keeper's Origins. I
own the first few books, like the baby books 1 and 2, and so Dragon's Reach is the first book's name. She'll kill me if I don't remember the second. Yep, it was a Keeper's Origin. I was right. Keeper's Origin trilogy. Dragon's Reach is the first book. Second book is called, and I cannot remember. That's all right, but I will look it up and I will find them and read them. I think they're already on my Kindle. I just have to actually read them. I haven't read anything for like the last 2 weeks, except a super secret project by ML Wall that I'm reading.
I know what that book is. You're so lucky, Virginia. I'm jealous of you. We did happen to mention. So ML was kind enough to blurb or potentially mention the title of it in one of our anticipated books, blog posts for like this year. So it's not a secret. At least I don't know if it's that one or not, but I know it's Blood Over Brighthaven was the title of that book.
That book I haven't read.
Okay, so it's something else.
Reading a different secret project. And I think I'm not supposed to talk
She
about it,
is
so I'm not gonna.
sneaky. She
She's very
is
sneaky.
sneaky.
Very sneaky.
Kudos
But
to you, ML, for doing that.
but Blood Over Brighthaven is going to be amazing. What I'm reading is like very early stage. Basically, yeah. Anyway, but it's super
Okay.
fun and I'm enjoying it. And I probably shouldn't talk about it because yeah. Anyway, gonna not talk about it.
Fair
But
enough.
everyone should just be excited to read absolutely anything that she puts out. So
100%.
and I don't know when this one's coming. Okay. I'm going to try to fly through the last few questions here because they've now taken 90 minutes of your time and you probably have to go do things and I probably have to go do bedtime things. So I think I'll take two of the remaining questions. Oh man, like these are a lot of good ones. Oh well, we chatted a lot and that's how these things always go. If you were to write a book yourself, what genre, subgenre, and themes would it address?
Oh, this is a really good question, but I am not a writer. I don't know what I would write. That's why.
Alternate question was, or if you've never thought of writing a book yourself, what book do you desperately want to read that doesn't currently exist?
Yes. So this is for writers everywhere. Please get to talk to me about the Mahabharata. That is the world's longest epic, the world's most fantastic epic. If somebody could do like a fantasy version of it, I know there have been some versions. There's currently 2 writers, Indian writers, writing about it, but I would love more versions because the more people write about it, the more people will know about it. So if anybody can write about the Mahabharata in a heroic fantasy setting, in a epic fantasy setting, shout out to 2 people, Geeta Krishnan. She's writing like a political version of the Mahabharata with taking the characters but kind of tweaking them. It's called, the first book is out. It's free on Amazon, called Pradyutita. And Sons of Darkness by Gaurav Mohanty. It's coming out next month as well. It's more of like a dark fantasy world with characters from the Mahabharata, but of course not the Mahabharata. So it's again 2 different versions, so people can jump. I love it. Like for me, the Mahabharata is the story. It's my mind's magnum opus. Like that is the most inventive, terrific story ever written. And I say it's story because it's mythology, so take it with a grain of salt if it happened or not. I really choose to believe that might have happened, but it's a rich, epic mythological story. And I would love for people to read it, introduced to it, and write about it. So please do. Anybody.
Noted. Awesome. I think in our last conversation, I mentioned that we've been reading the Adu Shah books, which very loosely pull from the Mahabharata. And that's super fun. And I've really loved learning just those little pieces of it. And I can't wait to learn more about it. So
I have a small update for you. I'll tell it to you after the interview ends.
Okay. And so that's awesome. Everyone write that down. Note it and write the book that Mihir is desperate
for me.
Yes, do it for Mihir. Brilliant. And oh man, I want to ask you all these questions though. How am I supposed to pick?
Pick 2.
I'll pick 2 more. Yeah, pick 2 more. Okay. What is a book that you've read lately that gave you a reading hangover or similar? We talked a little bit beforehand about how reading hangovers aren't exactly how you experience this, but yeah, what's a book that like wowed you so much?
Oh, so literally, I just finished it earlier this week. It is The Umbral Storm by Alec Hudson.
Ooh,
it is.
I've seen the cover for that.
We got lucky. He allowed us to do a cover reveal for it earlier last month. Or this month, and I begged him for the ARC. And again, super nice guy. He gave it to me, and I was reading it, and and I know I shouldn't be saying this. Like it is entered in this SPFBO. I'm really hoping that it makes the finals. Again, no pressure for the judges if they don't choose it. It's absolutely okay. But that book was so fantastic. It has probably one of the most innovative magic systems that I've seen. Cool. Alec Hudson also writes really good, intriguing characters, and it's an epic fantasy, but it's only through 3 character viewpoints. So that was pretty cool. And they're all such nice characters. They're not mean, they're not dark, yes, they're complicated, they come from computer past, but all of them are nice to read about. So
that's nice.
The Umbral Storm, I loved it so much that I ordered a paperback copy. It's gonna come day after tomorrow. I'm gonna reread it. So for the viewers, I did not know what a book hangover meant, but basically I love to reread books if I love them. So I'm gonna read it as soon as I get the
That's
paper.
Fabulous. Okay, that is a very strong recommendation, and I will be sure to check out The Umbral Storm by Alec Hudson. Okay, I love that note. That's a good note to sort of wrap up on from there. So, but I really do want to ask this one, because if we have authors watching who would like to reach out to bloggers, I do want to ask, what is something that you would tell all new authors who are planning to approach bloggers about reviews?
Well, of course, read their guidelines. Most blogs have their guidelines, but if you can make a mention of what books they have read recently and that they loved, and you can craft your letter like that, hey, I saw that you read that book and you loved it. My book's kind of similar. I received a couple of letters like that, and I was instantly, I'm happy for one, because this person that has done some research.
Right.
And two, it kind of, it basically lights an interest in me. Okay, if they know that I I am a huge David Gemmell fan, and when authors reach out to me and say, hey, I'm a David Gemmell fan, I was inspired by his works, my books are in his vein, that's like a bulb goes in mind. I'm gonna grab that. So if you can do a little bit of research, I know it's exhausting, there are so many reviewers out there, but if you particularly like one reviewer, if you want them to review a book, get to know them, get to know what their likes are, and see if you can craft your proposal to kind of include some of that. If your book matches that, or if you're, if it's kind of
don't make it up, don't lie.
Don't lie. Yes, because if your book is not like Malazan and the reviewer likes Malazan, and you say this is the next Malazan, they're probably going to take you up for it. Yeah. But they might give you a bad review because it's not like Malazan. So.
Also, the next Malazan, saying you're inspired by it is one thing, but calling it the next one is sort of what are you even doing with your time?
I mean, people, I know they like to use the words next King Killer, next Song of Ice and Fire, so that's why. But I'm not a Malazan fan, so what do I know?
Right. Fair enough. But yeah, it always cracks me up. I'm the next whatever. I'm like, yeah, you have no control over that.
Absolutely.
But yeah. So, but that's great advice. I love the idea of people actually reviewing, researching the blog that they're going to submit to, and say, hey, I see that you like these things. My book has some of these elements, and maybe you would enjoy it. That's a great idea. And how nice to make your job a little bit easier and make their book sound more appealing.
Entice the reviewer.
Yes, lure them in. Okay, that is awesome to know. So we get to the final question, the one that I ask everyone who's on here, or some version of this, is if you could be any fantasy creature, what would you be and why?
Oh, that is
the most important question I ask.
I know, but that's such a difficult question. If I could be any fantasy creature.
Any fantasy creature.
I would choose maybe a Pegasus. Am I pronouncing that right? The horses with wings, right?
Yeah. I would, Pegasus, yeah.
Because I love, when I was a kid, I used to read, I loved the Flash as a character, and I used to always love to run really fast. And I always imagine, I don't know horses run really fast, so that's why. Yeah, and of course, if you're a fantasy creature, you gotta fly. At least in my mind, you gotta fly. So why not be a Pegasus? And only because there's not been a fantasy creature where a gorilla or an elephant has wings, because otherwise I love both of those.
Okay, but now I want to write an elephant with wings, because that would be amazing.
That would be amazing, right? And elephants are such cool creatures. So
they are.
I love elephants. My wife loves elephants too. She's a big elephant fan, more so than me. But I love gorillas because they're these huge creatures who seem so dangerous, but they're actually nice and kind and vegetarians. So that just blows my mind. But yeah, no, most likely a Pegasus, because I think that'll be cool. You can run, you can fly.
That seems like an excellent choice. I like it. And I also now I want to make up some additional flying gorillas and elephants. So walk me through. I'm going to throw that into a book at some point. I'll mention you in the acknowledgements for sure.
Put that in the book, and I'll read it.
That is fabulous. Okay, well, I am going to let you go because you have already given me an hour and 40 minutes of your time, and thank you so much for that.
No, thank you.
And thanks to everyone who's watching. We definitely had a good chunk of viewers at the beginning. I think, as often happens with these, viewership drops off in the middle, but we have lots of people who watch them later. But thank you to everyone who's watching. We didn't have time for questions because we just chatted the entire time, which is great. Please go check out FBC in general, specifically the interview series that Mihir is doing, and which I'm going to grab the link for and throw into the description for this video. And but also just check out all of FBC's reviews in general, and make sure you're following FBC on Twitter. Do you do all of the tweeting for FBC or just the majority?
It's, I would say, right. I mean, a couple of people share the account, but I haven't seen them log in for a long time. So it's now mostly me.
That's
So
what I was
it's
gonna say.
mostly
Like
me.
anytime I see FBC commenting, I pretty much I usually just say like, "Oh, thanks, Mihir."
Yeah, it's mostly me. Yeah, it's like I know Lucas can tweet, but he has his own account. I'm just too lazy again to create a Twitter account. So I'm like, I'll manage FBC. So
You
yeah,
just manage
if you're tweeting at a fantasy book critic, that's me. Say hello. I'll say hello back.
Nice.
But yeah.
Yeah, and go ahead.
Thank you, Virginia, for this, and thank you to everybody watching. This was such a lovely experience. So much fun.
This was a ton of fun. Thank you so much. And and thanks to everybody watching as well. And we're scheduling other interviews coming up, but I don't know exactly when. So everyone keep an eye on the channel, like and subscribe. That's a thing.
Yes, do that. Definitely do that.
And then also go subscribe to Mihir's channel. So, all right. Apparently a dog is being stepped on or something.
Oh, you need to go too. All right. Bye, Virginia.
But first,